The Great, Catherine the Great, Crimean War, serfdom abolished, Alaska sold to the...
Not all Russians, let me be honest.
Not
You guys do have
me.
that.
Bunny is cool, but this no.
Not me.
In addition-
Not me.
Hey everybody, welcome to DaniilProduction channel. Nam to Sunauga. My name is Daniel and this is my mom Yana.
Hello everybody.
Today we will make an exception and we will watch not Indian video, not Bangladeshi video, but Russian video. Not Russian video, but video about Russia. You recommended it to us, and why are we watching this video? We reacted to Geography Now India. Here is the link of this video. Also states of India, check it out, it's very interesting. You asked us to watch Russian version. This channel is about Asian videos, but Russia is and Europe and Asia. So it's Asian video too, I think a little bit of
Very big
half
country.
of Asia. Let's learn something about our country.
Maybe some facts will be interesting for us.
Yes.
We don't know. Every view from our other side very interesting. When you are stranger in this country and see something new for us, also it's very interesting, I suppose.
Yes, there are a lot of stereotypes about Russia.
Yes, there are a lot of lies, there are a lot of fairy tales
Yes.
about Russia and the funny facts, and let's see, let's check, maybe.
check it out, is it here or not.
Yes.
Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done this yet, put thumbs up, write comments, don't forget about notification bell, and share this video with your friends. We hope you will enjoy it because it's very long video. Our country is big, so video is big.
You can sleep a little
And,
bit.
no, don't sleep please. It's very interesting because it's interesting country, and maybe interesting video because this channel is very funny. So let's enjoy it.
Everyone, we've reached Russia, the big guy. You've probably heard of him. For this episode, I really wanted a real Russian to co-host with me. One guy immediately popped up. Say hi to Mr. Mike. Born and raised in Russia, in childhood, speaks the language, knows the culture. This dude is my go-to Russian guy. Quick disclosure, I've lived here in the States
English accent.
3 times longer than I've lived in Russia. That said, where I falter, this is a
It's
pretty
more
difficult
difficult for me.
Thank you, Mike. Either
to-
way, it was either you or that Dimitri guy down my street. Crackhead? Oh, see how slim our options were? You're the best I got.
It's hard to learn geography.
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs, here with Mike. Russia is a big country that everyone has heard of. Big, unique, and above all, it's a country many of you guys have been waiting for on this channel. And this is gonna be a pretty big episode. We're gonna cover as much as we can without rushing into it. Приветствуем вас на русский эпизод. Now, as we all know, by land area, Russia is the largest country on Earth.
Yeah.
The country is
Yes.
so big, it's difficult to even get an accurate two-dimensional flat cutout of the nation due to the width of their
Of course.
land straddling a spherical arc on Earth's surface.
Right.
And with lots of space comes lots of interesting geographical anomalies. Russia is so big that it has about 1/8 of all inhabited land on Earth and almost the same amount of surface area as the entire planet of Pluto. Russia is a transcontinental country that straddles both Eastern Europe and Northern Asia in a larger landmass known as Eurasia. It is often understood that the European part of Russia, where about 77% of the population lives, is everything west of
Yeah,
the
it's
Ural
strange.
mountain range, and the remaining 23% live on the east side. At about 6,600
Oh,
miles or
cool.
9,000 kilometers east to
I
west,
think.
the country covers 11 time zones and the longest border in the world with 14 different countries. Yes, even North Korea at the very narrow tri-point with China. In addition, they recognize 2 more disputed areas that they border, North Ossetia and Abkhazia, as countries, even though the international community recognizes these areas as part of Georgia. Also, the country has military bases in 9 countries abroad, including the breakaway state of Transnistria in Moldova. Keep in mind, the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the world's first and largest space launching facility, is actually leased out to Russia until 2050 and acts as like a Russian exclave. The country is divided into 85 federal subjects, 2 of which are disputed, and all are divided further into 6 categories. The 46 oblasts or
Common
provinces.
information.
These are the most common subjects with direct control from the central government. Keep in mind, the westernmost point of Russia is actually in this detached exclave known as the Kaliningrad Oblast. Then you have the 22 republics. These are nominally autonomous areas that have the right to their own constitution and language alongside with Russian, as many of them are inhabited by ethnic minorities with their own cultures. Then you have the 9 krais, or territories, which are basically just oblasts but with a historical tie to being frontier regions, many of which are sparsely populated. You have the 4 autonomous okrugs, or districts, which are like little sister areas that have a certain level of autonomy but are still subordinate to a certain oblast. These 2 oblasts are in charge of these 3 okrugs, whereas the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug is the only one not subject to any oblast or krai. Then you have one strange unit known as the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, which was kind of like a deliberately created entity that was supposed to be a new home for Russia's Jewish population, even though today less than 1% of the population is Jewish, but it's still called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast. And finally, you have the 3 federal cities, the 2 largest ones, Moscow, the capital of the country, and St. Petersburg, as well as the controversial disputed Sevastopol, located on the controversial Crimean Peninsula that is claimed by Ukraine and Russia claims as the Crimean Republic. This is a tricky subject we'll talk about later. In short, these 3 cities kind of operate as their own regions and are not subject to any oblast. And that was just the administrative division section. We didn't even get into all the other weird stuff.
Like how this guy wants to revive the House of Romanov and possibly buy land in the Balkans for a micronation.
Or how the California Independent Republic actually has an embassy in Moscow.
Or how they once had sovereignty over Alaska for over 100 years, known as Russian America, and was like, aha! I got a piece of America. How you doing, settlers?
Not so good.
Oh, man, this war against the Ottomans is costing me a fortune. I need money.
Whoa, there's a gold rush on the west coast in California. Let's all go, now.
The Americans and the British Canadians might get closer and try to take over. It costs more to defend my American territory that I don't even pay any attention to. Maybe I should just sell it. Hey, UK, you interested?
I've got quite enough Arctic tundra. I think I'm quite all right.
USA?
All that frozen, useless land, you better sell it to me for cheap.
And that's how they sold it for only 7.2 million, which by today's inflation rates would be equivalent to about 130 million or about 2 cents per acre.
For what it's worth, though, Russia kind of got its general land territory we know today from the conquests, mostly from Cossacks that ended in the late 17th century, led by this dude.
What is a Cossack? Well, long story short, it's kind of like this.
What
So sick of this
What did he say?
What is the Cossacks monsters?
Why?
Monsters show something like this. Funny guy, very funny guy.
Gretchen, I just need to get out of this town and get in a fight or something.
Hey, you're an intrepid guy with a death wish who probably wouldn't mind maybe dying. How would you like to go out and get paid to do that for my country?
How?
Just like go out, make alliances with the locals, or go kill them. Just give me more land. It's an adventure.
Like a mercenary or something.
Let's not call it that, but something like that. And that's basically how Russia grew from this to this.
In any case, there's a lot more to the Russian scene than just political divisions. The capital and largest city is Moscow, where nearly 1/10 of the entire population lives. It is the largest European city, and as of 2020, is one of the top 20 largest cities by city proper on Earth, with over 13 million people. Here, of course, you can find the 3 biggest and busiest airports. Otherwise, St. Petersburg, the 2nd largest city, has the 4th busiest airport. Just to skip away, St. Petersburg does hold the largest shipping port, the port of St. Petersburg, right on the coast of the Gulf of Finland. The country has thousands of islands and islets off its coast, mostly situated in the Arctic, with the largest one, Sakhalin, located in the Pacific. Going up, you see these 2 little guys here, the Diomede Islands. Yep, the big one on the left belongs to Russia, and the small one to the right belongs to the USA. And they sit right on the international date line, effectively meaning that even though they are only about 2 miles apart, Big Diomede Island is an entire day ahead of Little Diomede Island. Speaking of which, they have about 23,000 miles of coastline, mostly in the Arctic, giving them the largest EEZ claim over the Arctic Sea. The country has a few territorial disputes. In Asia, you have the Kuril Islands in the east with Japan, where both claim ownership over these islands just off the coast of Hokkaido. In the Caspian Sea, Kazakhstan claims these 3 islands that are currently under Russian control. And finally, you have the most notable dispute that has made all the international headlines recently, Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. In the shortest way to summarize, in 2014, Russian troops took over and essentially the entire area was annexed by Russia following a controversial referendum, as most people there are Russian and voted to secede themselves back to Russia. To this day, the international community does not recognize this referendum as legitimate, but the area is still de facto run by Russia. This means that even further than Crimea,
it's Russia,
Sea of Azov is also
Absolutely.
disputed. Otherwise, if you look at the population density map of Russia, most people east of the Urals actually live close to the famed Trans-Siberian Railroad, the longest rail line in the world that traverses
Longest.
different countries,
Yes, yes.
effectively giving them access to other
8
nations
hours,
like Mongolia, China, and even
8
further
days
as North
maybe.
Korea. Travel gets even more
Something like
complicated
this,
the further
right.
north or east you go. To this day, there are no main highways that reach the furthest eastern subject, the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug, and anyone wishing to go there must fly or probably take a chartered boat from the other coastal areas along the Pacific. Whew, that was a lot of information, so let's just skip over to the list of notable places.
Some of the top places you guys, the Russian geography suggested we mention in the video, include places like Dargov's City of the Dead,
Lenin's Mausoleum,
Izmailova Kremlin,
the Moscow metro stations,
Измайлов
Temple
is
of All
near
Religions,
our
Tsar
home.
Bell,
the Dostoevsky Theater,
the Vodka Museum in St.
What can you
Hotel
see?
Ukraina,
Bolshoi Zavadsky Island Maze,
Freud's Children's Museum,
Okay.
Whalebone Alley,
Okay.
the Sovolki Monastery and Army Base in Gulag,
Ulan-Ude Ethnographic Museum,
the mummified remains of this guy.
the most famous statue probably being the worker and kolkhoz woman. They've even have the tallest statue of a woman in the world.
There are, of
Yeah.
course, so many
Volgograd?
churches, mostly
Yes.
Orthodox.
So many amusement and theme parks.
And Mike, the most top famous places would probably be...
The Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral, the Winter Palace, and Peterhof.
Alright, well that was a lot of heavy information. Russia is no joke when it comes to contrast.
Much like the landscape, which brings us to...
Now, when it comes to the
Physical
physical makeup, Russia is kind of like an ice cream shop. I mean, yes, most of the country experiences cold and freezing temperatures, but being the largest country on Earth area-wise means you're going to have a lot of different physical regions, so it's kind of like different flavors of cold, right? What do you think, Mike?
For one,
The country starting in the west begins with the flat and relatively lush European plain. From there you have the Caucasus Mountains in the southwest, where you can find the highest
Caucasus.
point, the tallest point in Europe,
English,
Mount
very
Elbrus.
strange.
Just to skip away, you
Кавказ.
find the Volga River Delta, the largest delta in Europe. fed by the
Звучало
Volga
как, как
River. The Caucasus
кактусовые
and Ural
горы.
Mountains together make up the boundaries of what is considered European Russia. And from there, Asia begins with this massive area known as Siberia, divided into the West Siberian Plain, where the mighty
I've
Volga
never
River
been in
flows, the
Siberia.
North Siberian lowland, and the Central Siberian Plateau. Just
Yes,
south along
we
the
were
border of
only
Mongolia,
in
you have
European
the
part.
Sayan and
Yes.
Yablunovi Mountains, where you can find the largest lake of
Baikal.
Russia and the deepest in the world,
I would
Lake
like to
Baikal,
go
which,
to
by the way,
Baikal.
has some of the
Mm,
oldest
it's
freshwater
beautiful
seals
place,
on
yes.
Earth. It is
Nice.
fed by a tributary
Ah,
of the longest
Zelenki.
river of Russia, the Lena, which flows northward into the Arctic.
Yes.
From there, you
Very
have
big
all these
river.
other mountain ranges that shield the Kolyma lowlands, and finally, you reach the
Kolyma
highly
lowlands.
Kolyma.
It
Kalima.
sounds very strange.
Kolyma.
Kolyma.
Southward, all sitting on the Ring of Fire. In fact, the Kamchatka and disputed Kuril island chain have more volcanoes out of anywhere else in the country, at about 200, about 60 of which are still active. The three most active and continuously erupting ones being Karimsky, Kizimen, and Shivoluch. Keep in mind, up north, the Arctic Ocean is actually divided into 5 separate seas. On the Russian side, the Chukchi, the East Siberian, the Laptev, Kara, and
Chukchi.
Barents.
The
Here you can also
Okay,
find the
Chukchi.
northernmost point of Russia's domain,
Sounds
Franz
fun.
Sorry,
Josef
it's,
Land Islands. They
just
are right above
funny
the
sounds
very,
in
very,
English.
very,
Yes.
very funny
and also the
sounds.
site where the
Nova
largest atom
Земля.
bomb ever was dropped. Fun fact, amidst all this
Ah.
land, about 60% of it is classified as being part of the Siberian taiga or taiga forests, which are forests situated in colder climates with
Taiga.
deciduous trees like oak, birch, and spruce. This is the largest forested area on Earth, yes,
Yes.
even bigger than the Amazon. Much of the south of Russia is classified
Легкие
under the steppe
планеты
region
их
zone,
называют,
or
по-моему.
massive expanses of grassy land with
Или
few
Амазонку
trees,
называют,
ideal for
которые-
agriculture with moderate temperature and
тоже.
sunshine and moisture. Otherwise, the further north you go, the less hospitable the conditions get, and you reach the tundras and cold deserts, where very few people dare to live, but many resources are locked away, such as the numerous oil and natural gas reserves hidden in the interior and offshore sites in Siberia and the Arctic. Russia actually has the largest natural gas reserves in the world, making them the largest natural gas exporter and the largest
Yeah.
oil
Right.
producer in the
Gazprom.
world. Most of these petroleum
Gazprom
resources are
forever.
managed by state companies like Gazprom, Lukoil, and Rosneft.
Okay.
Lots of land and
Gazprom.
lots of stuff happening.
Russia's economy ranks as the 11th largest by nominal GDP and 6th largest by purchasing power parity in 2020.
Back to resources though, agriculture in Russia is kind of limited. Only about 0.1% of the 1 billion acres of arable land is used for permanent agriculture. And they only have a short 2 to 4 month harvest season.
This is due to much of the area covered in full or semi-permafrost, which is not ideal for crop production.
One thing it does produce though are these interesting geological formations known as pingos, which implode into massive massive
Fingals?
craters which
Fingals?
fill with ponds,
What
making
is
the
it?
landscape the most
Tundra
tropophobic triggering
Fingals.
region on Earth.
Oh, get it away from me!
All the strange water and wind erosion is also the reason why Russia has incredibly distinct remote rock formations found all over along the taiga and steppe regions.
This means almost all farming happens in the southern areas of Russia where the climate is slightly warmer and accommodating.
Nevertheless, even with the limited industry, Russia still ranks #1 in producing certain crops such as buckwheat, barley, oats, sugar beet, currant, gooseberries, and raspberries.
In addition, they are the largest
of berries.
palladium and diamond producer in the world.
When you think of Russia immediately, you think of coal. I mean, you
Yes,
have the coldest
right.
inhabited town on Earth.
But Russia actually has the largest temperature range on Earth recorded as well. The town of Verkhoyansk can go from 37 degrees in summer to
Verkhoyansk?
-68 in winter.
Very
making
cold
105
city.
different
Technically, the fringes of the Caspian Sea in the south are also considered semi-arid desert zones, making them some of
Yes,
the warmest regions in
we
all
have
Russia.
that.
And some of the surrounding landscapes you could
A little
swear
bit,
were
but,
northern Africa
yes.
or the Middle East with sand dunes and camels.
Speaking of camels, animals. The country has over 260 mammal species and nearly 800 bird species.
Animals you may have heard of, such as the Siberian tiger, Asiatic black bears,
tigers.
Eurasian lynx.
In the tundra regions, you can also find polar bears, reindeer, walruses, narwhals, arctic foxes.
In the warmer areas, you have wolverines, as well as that strange saiga antelope.
Saiga.
Strange saiga.
Elongated nose.
Of course, it wouldn't be Russia without the national animal,
It's really
the
very
Eurasian
strange.
brown bear.
So yeah, Russia. It has deserts, and it can be over 100 degrees, imploding permafrost, and active volcanoes constantly erupting as we speak.
And finally, to finish all of this segment off, food.
Now, of course, due to the vast, wide domain and numerous ethnic groups found in Russia, the country has an enormous range of regional cuisines.
One common theme
Yes.
you'll notice is that Russians tend to pickle a lot of their vegetables since the harvest
Right.
season is short and crops are not available in the cold
You don't
months.
like
Anyway,
it.
just
I
add a
know.
dollop of sour cream to your soups, take a shot of vodka, and bam, you're in the Russian zone.
Some of the more widely known and popular dishes you guys, the Russian geography suggested, stroganoff, blini, chicken Kiev, голубцы, lots of different types of rye bread, many types of piragi. They have their own way of
Many
doing ice
types of
cream and
piragi.
grain desserts. Caviar is a big deal in Russia,
Yeah.
especially from sturgeons.
Special
Many
stuff.
soups were a big soup and
Very
salad
delicious.
culture.
He
You have
speak
things
without
like
accent,
sheep,
it's
solянка,
борщ,
борщ,
солянка,
anyway,
уха.
salads include vinaigrette,
Vinaigrette.
yeah.
And they celebrate it on New Year's and they eat it on New Year's.
It's not a party unless that salad's involved.
They also took it from the Belgians or something, right?
No, there was a Belgian guy who worked in a Russian restaurant, and then one of his sous chefs ended up stealing the recipe.
Stole from the Belgians, New Year's,
Right.
got it. Now, we could go on and on, but it would take forever because Russia has over 180 recognized ethnic groups, which each have their own distinct culture.
Speaking of which, I think that's just about the right time to transition to... In regards to Russian people, Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "It's frightening to see how free a Russian man's spirit is, how strong his will. Being a Russian carries a powerful meaning to the Russian people. It's a title of honor and pride many of them take."
The country is made up of about 143 million people. It is the most populous nation in Europe, and as of 2020, the 9th largest country in population on Earth. About 80% of the country identifies as ethnically Russian, and the remaining 20% come from one of the 180 or so ethnic minorities found throughout the country, the largest one being the Tatars at about 3.7%, and Ukrainians at about 1.4%. From there, you have everything else from the
More.
Bashkirs, Chuvash, Karelian, and so on. Keep in mind, many of these minority groups are East and Central Asian in their heritage, like the Yakut and Tuvan and Altai peoples, who speak Turkic or Mongolic-based languages, and are not Caucasian like the majority of people that identify as Russian. They use the Russian ruble as their currency, they use the types C and F plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road.
Russian, of course, is the national language. However, the republics are allowed to have their own co-official languages as well.
Oh, and speaking of which, Russian cursive is like the most modern.
Now, Russia, you
Лишишься.
have a lot of backstory, but the best way to probably start off is by
The
understanding
most
this
difficult
clause.
word.
In Europe, there are
In
three main
Russian
powerhouse
Handmade.
ethno-linguistic groups: the Germanic, the Latin, and the Slavic. Slavs are the largest one, and Russians make up the highest population of Slavs.
The roots are documented from Roman times, and they have spread all throughout Eastern, Central, and Southern Europe.
With the exception of a few outliers like Poland and Croatia, the majority of Slavs in the world have a background in Orthodox Christianity, which was kind of like a further stem thing from the Byzantine Empire.
If you don't know what any of that stuff is, basically in like the 4th century, Europe was like,
Oh no! I'm dying! The Germanic people keep attacking! I'm losing money and nobody wants to claim Caesar as divine! Help me, my predominantly Hellenistic Greek-influenced subjects to the east!
Good luck.
I'm doing my own thing. I also made my own capital, and I'm ditching that polytheistic stuff for Christianity.
And then in the 11th century, it was like...
So what's your problem? Why do you want to split up?
Well, besides the secondary dogmas we disagree on, we mostly don't like your practices. We don't think the Pope has any authority over the church.
Yeah, but you guys have patriarchs.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Those are like regional managers. Also, you guys have way too many creepy statues. We believe priests should be allowed to marry, and we kind of like growing out our beards.
Well, yeah, well, at least we play actual musical instruments during Mass.
There's a lot more that goes into it, but getting into the theological discrepancies between the two
What
would
he's
take
doing?
forever to explain.
In any...
Я немного не понял, что он сказал про православие. Что типа православие отделилось от католицизма, он сказал, или что?
Нет, они просто отделились друг от друга, как бы. Я просто поняла, что он рассказывает о разностях каких-то. Это то, но как оно могло отделиться. Не просто
вообще
разные.
католики отделились.
Ну, это
Изначально
да.
было православие.
Less than half of the population of Russia actually
No,
adheres
it's
to the
Moscow.
faith, and about 30% of the country
Church.
identifies as either
Cathedral.
spiritual but not religious, or unaffiliated agnostic or atheist. Aside from all that, it is important to note that not everybody in Russia is Slavic or Orthodox.
I already made a video explaining about these,
Yeah.
so we don't really have to talk too much about it. Just watch the video. But basically, you have everything from the Turkic, Mongolic, Circassian, Uralic, and even Inuit peoples in the far northeast Arctic regions.
They even have the westernmost Buddhist community on
No,
Earth.
I
A
think
lot of...
Now, compared to the rest of Europe, Russia does have a high birth rate and immigration rate.
Nonetheless, they also have a relatively high
A lot
death
of
rate,
nationality.
especially amongst men. In fact, today, women outnumber men in Russia at a 1 to 0.84 ratio.
Yeah, there's a lot more women. In Russia, the competition amongst women is kind of visible. You explain.
It's not uncommon to see women dressing up in full presentation mode with heels and nails done, even just to go to the store to pick up milk.
To dive further into the
That's
social
right.
dynamic, you have to kind of understand Russia has gone through a lot of eras throughout its history.
Basically, they've had kingdoms, invasions, expansions, wars, empires, unions, and most notable era, the 20th century communist era.
The word has an almost ubiquitous connotation with the country of Russia.
This is why you hear a lot of those distinct Soviet communist era words and phraseologies used in media like proletariat, bourgeoisie, means of labor, comrade!
They were the first nation to extensively kick off and implement the political ideology constitutionally after the October Revolution, and furthermore, they spread it abroad.
I mean, that's kind of what the whole Warsaw Pact and Eastern Bloc things were during the Cold War, and it goes even further than that.
All right, we just destroyed those Nazis. Awesome job, man. You know, Russia, it was really cool working with you. You're all right.
Yes, my drug. It was quite pleasure destroying real enemy.
Well, I guess my European friends and I should help Germany set up a free market system. Privatize their corporate policy and stimulate the cash flow through competitiveness to get them back on their feet.
No. Me and my friends will help set up collective system that mobilizes and encourages
System.
proletariat to
Russian
function
ex-
efficiently by state regulations with no independent red tape loopholes.
Oh, shit. Is this really happening?
Da, I believe it is.
Da.
I take east, you take west.
And in the 50s, it was like...
I influence north, you influence south.
And in the 70s,
I support north.
I support South.
and so on.
Which begs the question, what exactly is communism? Although there are many schools of thought and varying definitions, in the shortest way of summarizing, communism is a philosophical, political, social, and economic ideology and movement derived much from the writings of Karl Marx.
The ideal ultimate goal is to establish a common ownership and means of production by the people and the state. Or in the simplest form, you don't technically own anything, everyone technically owns everything on paper. But the state gets first dibs and distributes what it deems as most efficient, technically, kind of, but not. It's weird. It's weird.
Anywho, after the fall of the Soviet
Yes,
Union in
it's right.
91, they changed their system of operation. Legislatively, on paper, Russia classifies itself as a federal dominant party semi-presidential constitutional republic with an
Yes,
emphasis
now it's
on
not
a
communism,
federally
yeah.
state-run economic model and Russian conservatism as a popular
It's
ideology.
mix.
This party, United Russia, holds about 3/4 of the seats in the Federal Assembly.
And it's semi-presidential because the president is head of state, whereas the prime minister is head of government. However, it's a lot more complex than that. Mike, what would you say?
So, this is a country that is notoriously known for changing the rules as they play the game. I sort of see it as an oligarchy.
Okay, so that being said, let's highlight some of the notable cultural traits and accomplishments that Russians are known for.
For one, Russians were pioneers in the space race and kicked off the age of space exploration.
Here's my buddy Destin from Smarter Everyday talking about it.
All right, Paul, if you're going to talk about Russia, you've got to talk about aerospace engineering because they are impressive. It all started back in the day when a Russian visionary named Tsiolkovsky came up with this momentum balance for rockets, which came to be known as the rocket equation. Back in the early days of spaceflight, the Soviet Union kicked off the space race by launching Sputnik, the first satellite in space. Moved forward through the space race, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. That was a really big deal. Fast forward to today, and you'll realize that Russia and the United States are not just collaborating, there's a full-on partnership between the two nations. No matter what political situation is going on the ground, these engineers, NASA and the Russian aerospace industry, they've been working together to make human space exploration possible. The International Space Station, one of the most amazing things ever made by humans, has been a platform for persistent human presence in space since the late 1990s. I love this thing. Also, the Russian Soyuz spacecraft, developed in the early 70s, has proven itself to be the workhorse of human spaceflight. This stuff is awesome. Thanks for letting me say that. If you're doing a video about Russia, you have to talk about rockets because Russians are good at rockets. Why don't you have a segment for each country about the rockets that are like? I know how you edit. You're gonna cut me off now. You can have a.
And aside from the space race, there are many discoveries and inventions attributed to Russian innovators. Here's just a few of them that we will put on a full screen montage.
They even invented the game Tetris.
Yes, it's Russian. Do you know? It's Russian game.
This dude meant to have also created the earliest form of the period.
Right?
Он рос в России, он же сначала сказал. Он поэтому по-русски, если говорит, то без акцента даже.
Ага.
И у него английский акцент. Интересно, почему?
Потому
что у нас в школах учат с английским акцентом разговаривать.
Product table, and some elements are actually named after Russians and Russian places, including the guy himself.
They're also the pioneers of stem cell research and numerous surgical procedures like heart and lung transplants.
Even amongst the diverse republic areas, there are some universal Russian customs and traits that transcend regional boundaries.
All Russians take holidays and festivals very seriously and enjoy their times of celebration. Christmas was effectively brought up to New Year's, and instead of Santa Claus, they have Ded Moroz, basically translates to Grandfather Frost. Later iterations give him a little sidekick, Snegurочка.
Otherwise, all over you have other festivals celebrated like these. Women's Day is a huge one.
It's a common misconception that Russians are genetically acclimated to the cold.
Explain.
We just can't.
Not all Russians, let me be honest.
You guys do have that like
Not me,
Vanya
yes.
sauna culture. You guys jump.
Vanya is cool, but this no.
In addition, Russians are known for excelling in a range of sports, most notably ice hockey, wrestling, figure skating, and gymnastics. They have consistently ranked high in the Olympics and ranked the #1 medal winners twice for the winter seasons of 1994 and 2014, where they hosted in Sochi.
Which has a stream of following controversies. Chess is a huge part of their culture. The game of cold logic rewards cunning and has always spoken to the Russians. Some of the top chess players in the world have come from Russia.
The 1830s
I'm not
Romanticism
professional,
was
but
seen as like the golden age of Russian writing.
Some of the top notable authors like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Chekhov, given the honor and prestige of Russian literature.
Russians have an incredibly long.
Everybody speak about Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and Chekhov, but we have a lot of writers. Why are they popular? Do you know? We have Pushkin, Gogol, and
also Pushkin, Gogol, and
these writers are difficult for foreigners. Pushkin поэт, например, да?
Возможно, они
их сложно переводить.
Да, возможно, их сложно переводить. Возможно, в европейских странах, в других странах изучают именно Достоевского. Вот,
да, и знают только вот этих трех почему-то. Но на самом деле, гигантский список.
На самом деле, нет, список большой, можно его продолжать.
Евгений Онегин, Пушкин — это просто непереводимая вещь, как с первой строчки.
Да.
Politics of folk music that dates back centuries,
and many native instruments are still used to this day, like the bayan accordion,
yes.
the spiral flute, strings like the domra, guzli, and the most famous of all of them, the triangle shape.
Every region has their own style of dance,
but the most internationally well-known styles probably being the troika and prisyatka.
Russians know how to put on a show. The world-renowned Russian ballet has been operating since the late 17th century, and everyone knows that Russians are some of the best circus performers in the world, excelling in acts like juggling, acrobatics, contortion.
Russia has many artists spanning across a wide spectrum of genres, movements, and styles.
Russia also has a history of animation.
It wasn't until 1935 that Soyuz Multfilm, Russia's largest animation studio, was started. We all grew up on this.
Ну погоди. It's my childhood. Yes.
Otherwise, what are some last minute things you
I
would like
watched
to tell
it
us about
too.
what it means
My
to be
mom
Russian?
too.
Yes, I
Without
also.
trying to be dismissive, Russians kind of like to
Soviet
franchise their own
Union
stuff. It's like
cartoons
Russians
is
don't live, they survive,
masterpieces.
among other things. It's considered weird to smile at people you don't know.
Why is that?
Trust you.
Yes,
Never give a knife
right.
as a gift. It's seen as a severing of ties. Russians are a very
It's
hospitable
strange
folk. Many will invite you into their homes and will display either sadness or offense if you refuse. Once you've made it in, they will often bribe you to stay with things like tea, conversation, booze. In Russia, middle names are not chosen by their parents. You are born with one. It is your paternal name. So my father's name is Yuri, therefore my middle name is Yurevich.
And that applies to women as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Women, you get a male name for your middle name. All right, with that said, here's a brief condensed history of Russia.
Early dispersed Slavic tribes.
Rurik the Rus unifies them.
The Kievan Rus.
Vladimir the Great.
Mongols invade.
Ivan the Great.
Ivan the Terrible.
House of
New
Romanov begins.
monuments of
Peter the Great.
Catherine the Great.
Crimean War.
Serfdom abolished.
Alaska sold to the U.S.
Russo-Japanese War.
World War I.
Rise of the Soviet Union with Lenin's Bolsheviks.
Royal Romanov family
Romanov,
is
yes.
deposed.
As depicted by that incredibly accurate cartoon,
Communism!
Lenin dies. His body is weirdly involved and put in display, but okay.
Stalin dictator years.
World War II. Germany breaks agreement and tries to invade Russia.
Big mistake.
Cold War begins.
Mistake.
Your arms race and space race with the USA.
Cuban
Big
Missile
mistake.
Crisis.
Summer Olympics in Moscow.
Gorbachev reforms and wins a Nobel Peace Prize.
Boris
Gorbachev,
Yeltsin wins first
perestroika.
popular presidential election.
It's all
Soviet
common
Union,
to
Chechen
common на
unsuccessfully
Yes.
tries
Common
to
for
break
us.
away.
Putin voted in for the first time, served 2
Putin-
terms, then after re-hiatus, voted
He's
in a
now
third time.
president.
Business and digital era boost Russia's economy.
Georgia-Russia war.
Russian troops take over Crimea.
Controversial referendum.
Here we
Annexation.
are today.
And there's a lot more we could have expounded on, but there isn't enough time, so if you'd like to add anything, please write it in the comments.
In any case, we've already mentioned
A
some
lot
famous
of
Russians in this episode,
things.
but here's a list of some more notable
impossible
Russians,
to
historic and modern.
talk
Some of the most
about
famous
everything.
authors include people like these.
Ah,
the
what?
most famous
Pushkin.
ones might be
Alexander Solzhenitsyn,
Solzhenitsyn.
Vladimir Nabokov,
Nabokov.
Nikolai
Go
a lot of
what?
famous actors and directors.
They
but
said
the
about
top
this.
one
It's
It's answer for
it's
your
interesting.
question.
Anatoly Papanov, Vladimir Vysotsky,
actors.
Andrei Mironov, John
Mironov.
Yelchin, Alla Pugacheva, Valery
Yelchin.
Sutkin, Boris Grebenshchikov,
Statesmen and war heroes like
Alexander Nevsky, Georgy Zhukov, Mikhail Kutuzov, Valentina Tereshkova, Vasily Zaitsev, Alexander Покрышкин,
tons of athletes like these.
Покрышкин,
Lev Yashin,
I don't remember.
Korbut, Irina Rodnina.
And there's a lot more. Please add them in the comments if we missed any.
Yeah, those are just my favorites.
As you can see, Russia is not just a country, but almost like its own world in itself.
And speaking of the world, that brings us to
Pam pam pam.
Now, with Russia, diplomacy has played a very unique role throughout the past few centuries, even before Cold War times.
as a transcontinental nation, they've always had kind of their hands in both European and Asian affairs, but it doesn't really stop there.
For Africa, 7 countries had governments that were actually influenced by Marxist ideologies brought in partially by Russians during Cold War times. These countries developed the closest ties diplomatically with Russia. It also explains why the flags of Angola and Mozambique have images inspired off of the former Soviet hammer and sickle emblem. In Asia,
So
things
press
go
for me.
all the way back to the era of
Comments.
expansion when Russia was conquering lands east of the Urals. Today, 4 countries in Asia are categorically classified as either
China,
constitutionally
yes.
communist or led by a communist party, primarily influenced by what was
Communist
back
party.
then communist Russia. They are China, North Korea, or the DPRK, Vietnam, and Laos. Russia is one of the few countries that had ties to North Korea after the Korean War, as they influenced certain aspects of their Juche ideology, and even during the most isolated years, Russians still had relatively easier access to North Korean travel and business. During war times, Russia also played a pretty strong role in the influence of various sides in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is one of the favorite hotspots for Russian tourists in Southeast Asia. With China, relations are
Thailand
generally
also.
amicable, although in the 50s there was the massive Sino-Soviet split in which China was like, look, Russia, it's cool you introduced the
Okay.
concepts, but we're going to run communism
It's
our own
popular
Chinese way, and we
in
don't want
Russia.
you to chime in anymore. Nonetheless, today China is one of their closest allies and biggest trading partners. Which is interesting because with
Communist
India,
good.
relations have been relatively good after the Indo-Pak War, in which
Not
Russia
only.
sided with India against Pakistan, who is an ally
India,
with China.
yes.
And today, Goa is a huge hotspot for Russian tourists as well.
Goa.
Either way, all 3 are members of the BRICS countries, which also include Brazil and South Africa. 5 emerging world regional powers that have agreements agreements on
BRICS,
and development. Cuba and Venezuela are probably the best Latin American friends, Cuba being the only country in the Americas that fully adopted communism and played an important role in the Cold War tensions. With Venezuela, it's a little complicated. Under the Chavez years, Russia was close with trade and military cooperation, but after his death, Russia vied to support the succeeding Maduro presidency, which was seen as invalid by many across the world, and from there things got even more complicated amidst the protests, and Russia vowed to support Maduro's side even more if military action was required. The USA is like the forbidden friend, shaking hands together with both fingers crossed behind their backs. Politically, everything has to be incredibly strategic, and not all the rules apply when they play. After the Cold War ended in 1991, relations warmed significantly, but then the US involvement in Central and Eastern Europe made Russia distrustful again, especially with the 1999 NATO interventions in the Balkans. From there, it's a back-and-forth ping-pong game. I'll set up missiles in Poland, I'll build a base in Venezuela, I'll flirt with Ukraine, I'll give asylum to Snowden, and so on. As people, though, the Russians and Americans actually get along pretty well. The USA has the 4th largest population of Russians in diaspora, and many famous Americans have Russian ancestry. When Americans meet a Russian, they might curiously ask questions about what being Russian is like, but at the end of the day, they enjoy the same drunken shenanigans. Ukraine is kind of like the best frenemy with Russia. They have the largest population of Russians outside of Russia at over 8 million, and it is incredibly complicated. Putting all the controversial areas aside like Crimea and Donetsk, Ukrainians and Russians may not always get along on paper, but they have an incredibly long history and they understand each other very well. It's even more interesting when Ukrainian and Russian marry each other.
Это очень близкие культуры. Мы один народ, по сути, это один народ исторически.
Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Serbia. Serbia, in essence, is kind of seen as like Russia Junior with a little Balkan spice. Both were once communist powers in their own right. Both follow the Eastern Orthodox branch of Christianity. Both write in the Cyrillic alphabet with few differences. Both are opposed to the whole Kosovo thing, and Russians are welcome with open arms in Serbia. Serbians even sometimes say they are one of the 300 million, referencing the entire Russian global population domestically and abroad. Kazakhstan and Belarus have always had close ties, and the Russian language is even co-official in their countries, and both were former USSR states. Kazakhstan has the 2nd largest population of Russians abroad at over 3.6 million, and they are kind of seen as like the breadbasket country to Russia, as their environment is more suitable for agriculture. Many food supplies come to Russia from Kazakhstan. Belarus is like Russia's girlfriend, who takes many cues from her boyfriend's lifestyle. The heads of state even play hockey together. The majority of Belarusians actually speak Russian instead of their native tongue Belarusian. This in return, however, has kind of prompted a sort of re-Belarusification period for the country, and they are now trying to reclaim their roots instead of just imitating Russia. Nonetheless, Belarus will always be one of Russia's biggest chips. In conclusion, Mike, I think you should take this.
Russia is an old and contradictory country. It's beautiful but scarred, eloquent and clumsy, cunning and simple. Its people are proud but damaged, resilient and defensive. Russians are unique but numerous, and if you should be so lucky to meet one, you'd be hard-pressed to forget them.
Stay tuned! Rwanda is coming up next. Hey guys, Art here with me. Just remember, we got Geography Now t-shirts and merch going on. We even have these new gym sacks that I just launched on the website.
So, it's very surprising for me that самое наполненное видео информацией о России от иностранцев, потому что
It's very full video, a lot of information, and most of information it's true. A lot of video about Russia and opinions about Russia, it's not stereotypical, right? Russian, all
Bears,
Russian.
vodka, matryoshka, balalaika, and that's all.
That's all.
And rude Russians.
In this video,
but it's not true.
This guy tried to show us a lot of information.
Russia is a country of contrasts.
Contrasts,
of,
a lot of people.
Religions, people, nationalities, nations.
Very strange for me was one of the things in this video. They said that about 6 nationality, right? Siberia, Chukcha, Russian, a little bit Tatar,
yes,
a little bit Ukraine. No. It's a lot of. I don't know how much, but it's about
only
25,
Siberia,
7.
People,
I don't know. Armenian, Georgia, Belarus, Ukraine.
Может быть, они считают это как люди из других стран? Потому что сейчас это другие страны.
Ну слушай, на самом деле очень многие живут
вообще...
здесь, просто было сказано, что чукчи живут здесь, Татарстан, Россия, Белоруссия, ну чуть-чуть украинцев, то есть 5 или 6 национальностей.
Да, у нас много народов.
На самом деле, да, a lot of, but I think it's a very small mistake. It can be, it
In
doesn't
such
matter.
big video, one
Yes,
mistake.
да.
And it was surprise for me that he mentioned Gogol and Pushkin because of this guy, I think. И это было, конечно, так приятно.
Мне
приятно.
кажется, тоже на самом деле мы очень мало знаем писателей других стран. У нас тоже есть свои какие-то стереотипы, да.
Просто даже люди,
там,
которые
Диккенсон, Шекспир.
интересуются.
Опс, аж кто дальше?
Просто люди, которые даже интересуются, даже они знают там вот максимум 3 человека. Именно этих 3 человека. Интересно, почему?
Да,
Ну ладно.
интересно. At the beginning of this video about small island, you know
Yes,
about
what
it?
is this island?
What is it?
I thought
I don't
that
know.
Берингов, I don't know how it is in English, Берингов пролив, and that's all.
Well, small islands, which reminds
We have some more islands.
half Russian and half USA. What is it? What is the island? You know what is it?
Еще один остров. Хорошо,
We
ладно,
didn't
пусть
know
будет.
it. Yes, it's
Okay.
very interesting.
I didn't understand about religion. He talked about Orthodox. We are Orthodox Christian. It was strange with jokes with this guy.
We don't
and
understand
yes,
all
very
this.
quick speech, and it was difficult. When I will edit it, I will understand maybe. Yes,
And
Orthodox is the first church.
But also there are a lot of religion in Russia.
Yes,
Catholic
Muslims,
Muslims and so
Jews,
on. A lot of
Buddhism.
Buddhism also.
Even Hinduism.
Hinduism also.
A little bit
A
percent,
little
but
bit,
yes.
but it quite much. And you know,
What?
one thing also he said it's everybody's mistakes. In Moscow, 13 million people, but
Already 15, I think.
already
Yes.
not 15, about 18.
Are you
Or
sure?
19. I'm sure with a stranger, nobody
Let's check it
can.
out.
You know, no. Nobody can count
Why?
how much people lives in our city, especially in Moscow, because a lot of people don't make registration or something like this.
No, it's
Yes.
official information.
Yes, official information also can be from 13 till 15, maybe 15.
12 million.
About 12 million,
12
but
million.
it's not true. It's not true.
Maybe
No,
more,
it's not
yes.
official information. But it's okay. It's okay.
Nobody
Nobody
he said
can.
about official, yes.
Yes, nobody can count. Yes,
How many?
how many people
Yes.
lives in Moscow.
So,
Все опять что ли, да? Еще
да
что-нибудь
все,
хочешь
наверное,
сказать?
ну, давай еще.
Thank you for recommend this video.
Yes,
We watching
and
was interesting.
watching our reaction.
Yes.
It was cool, it was interesting to watch how foreigners, what do they think about our country.
Yes.
So,
And they was very kindly, friendly, and I like it very
yeah,
much.
so we hope you enjoyed our reaction to our country, geography of our country. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done this yet. You haven't done this yet? Subscribe,
haven't done
please.
You haven't
Put
done this.
thumbs up, write comments, write have you ever been in Russia, what do you think about Russia?
Would you
And
like to
would
go
you like
there?
to visit Russia? Share this video with your friends as you do this move. I don't know why. Okay.
You saw this guy, he do something like this. Din 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 din. I said, with your friends. Din 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 din.
Okay. And
Why not? It's funny. It's just funny. Okay.
long video
Continue.
enough.
Continue.
We are tired. Don't forget about notification bell. Switzerland, by the way, well. So, han harahi piarke pirmilingi chalte chalte.